Welcome to Buddha at the Gas Pump. My name is Rick Archer. Buddha at the Gas Pump is an ongoing series of conversations with spiritually awakening people. We've done over 600 of them now, and if this is new to you and you'd like to check out previous ones, please go to batgap.com, BATGAP, and look under the past interviews menu. This program is made possible through the support of appreciative listeners and viewers. So if you appreciate it and would like to help support it, there's a PayPal button on every page of the website, and there's also a donation page which suggests alternatives to PayPal. My guest today is Shalane Harkin. Welcome, Shalane.
Thanks, Rick.
Yeah. We had a Senator Tom Harkin in Iowa for years. Any relation?
Not that I know of.
He was really nice. Anyway, I first heard about Shalane from Mary Reed, who has been on BatGap several years ago. She sent an email. She said, I saw on the BatGap website that you have hundreds of suggestions for guests, so I'm just checking to see if the intuitive poet Shalane Harkin is in your queue. She's causing a major stir right now in spiritual circles with the recent release of her first book, Susceptible to Light. I think I'll just show the cover of that book on the page here. Susceptible to Light. She's frequently compared to Hafez, Rumi, and Rilke, so much so that Daniel Ladinsky, renowned author of 7 books on the great mystic poets, reached out to her personally and has generously endorsed her book. Her second book is due to be published next month, just 5 months after her first. And that's now because her second book, Let Us Dance, which I'll show on the screen, is coming out today, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
This morning.
This morning.
It became
Cool.
Available.
Good,
yep.
Good timing. And that wasn't actually pre-planned, was it?
It was. There was some.
I mean, in terms of having it coincide with this interview?
There's a little story about that.
Okay.
But we'll tell it later, maybe.
Okay, good. But first, let's hear a little story about you. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. And quite very soon in this interview, within the next few minutes, I want to have you read a poem. But let's start by just telling us how you got to what you're doing now.
Sure. Yeah, so the last 7 months have been completely transformational in all kinds of ways. So rewind to November 2020, and I had a big collection of my poetry that I'd been sitting on for about 12 years and had kind of vaguely been thinking maybe someday it would be nice to publish a book. And it was kind of just a dream that didn't really have legs. And I had all kinds of inhibitions about what that process might reveal, and I was scared to move forward with it. And so I was kind of in this just paralysis mode with moving forward. And then the energies catalyzed in this, just the precise, by design feeling way, in which my motivation really became activated to move forward and to treat the process of publishing more as an experiment rather than a success fail. And so I just started taking these steps forward and reached out to everyone in my even very distant circle who had any know-how about publishing. And just things started moving and doors started opening at such an incredible rate. And I decided to self-publish this first book, Susceptible to Light, and didn't know anything about that process. And so I bought two books that I'd loved dearly, both written by Daniel Ladinsky, these Hafez books. And I was deeply inspired by them again. And I bought them to really be, the books have beautiful formatting. So I wanted to kind of just be inspired by that formatting. And then I started, I did another experiment. I decided to pray to Hafez every night and ask for inspiration help and ask for publishing help. And I just really went for it with this prayer. And I asked that Hafez find all the delegates in the spirit world and all the delegates in this world to be my marketing team. And every night just had this intense, focused prayer. I would go on a night walk and just chat with Hafez, and my poetic inspiration started flowing through me like never before. It was really just so noteworthy that something had changed. Yeah. And then, yep. And then anyhow, long story short, or not even that long of a story, but 3 weeks into that prayer, Daniel Ladinsky discovered my book and reached out to me, and all kinds of things have opened since then.
Yeah, you and I were talking yesterday, and we were recollecting a quote, and I looked it up, and here it is. It's from English explorer W.A. Murray. He said, "Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans, that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance, which no man could have dreamt would have come his way. I have learned a deep respect for one of Goethe's concepts, quote, whatever you can do, or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it, end quote." So that's what you did.
Yep.
Another part of Mary Reed's email was she said that your story of connection to the great muse is inspiring. Was that what you mean by Hafiz? Is Hafiz sort of your muse?
Good question. So I learned about Hafez poetry. For those who might not be familiar, Hafez is a mystic Persian poet.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like Rumi and sort of in that genre, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Maybe a little bit more irreverent,
Uh-huh.
but very similar. Yeah. And I don't actually remember when he lived. But anyway, so I heard a Hafez poem in a therapy session when I was, I think, 20 years old. And it was so potent, it was really penetrating, and it really had a major impact on just shifting the way I thought about God and spirituality. And so that Hafez poetry has been an inspiration for a long time, but my poetic process really began a long time ago, when I was about 21. And
long time ago, 11 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, 11 years ago. Feels like a while. Yeah, and poetry had been an important part of my life, but there was a lot of efforting involved in it. And then, I don't know, one day I just decided again to just do kind of an experiment, and I committed to writing what I said was a bad poem for 30 days and sharing it every day. And that commitment just really kind of it loosened me up, and it gave me some permission to explore and just let things flow more. And so on the second day of that experiment, something just cracked open wide in me, and a poem just came pouring through. So rather than this like effortful process that would take, weeks or months to like finally scramble a poem together, this just came through as quickly as I could write it. And that's been my process ever since. So poems come.
Which poem was that came streaming through?
Should I read it?
Yeah.
I've marked it.
Which one is that?
It's called Say Wow.
I think I have that one here. Yeah, I do. Okay, Say Wow. Okay. I'm going to show it on the screen. Go for it.
Okay, great. Say wow. Each day before our surroundings become flat with familiarity and the shapes of our lives click into place, dimensionless and average as Tetris cubes. Before hunger knocks from our bellies like a cantankerous old man, and the duties of the day stack up like dishes, and the architecture of our basic needs commissions all thought to construct the four-door sedan of safety. Before gravity clings to our skin like a cumbersome parasite and the colored dust of dreams sweeps itself obscure in the vacuum of reason. Each morning, before we wrestle the world and our hearts into the shape of our brain, look around and say, wow. Feed yourself fire. Scoop up the day entire like a planet-sized bouquet of marvel sent by the universe directly into your arms, and say, wow. Break yourself down into the basic components of primitive awe and let the crescendo of each moment carbonate every capillary and say, wow. Yes, before our poems become calloused with revision, let them shriek off the page of spontaneity. And before our metaphors get too regular, let the sun stay a conflagration of homing pigeons that fights through fire each day to find us.
Wow. I have to say, wow. That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so that you say it kind of poured through and you just scribbled it down as fast as you could. Try to elaborate on the subjective experience of that. You're out taking a walk or something and all this whole thing came to you. I mean, I've heard of things like that. For instance, Mozart said that sometimes a whole symphony would come to him in a flash and then he would have to sit down and write it all out, all the different instruments, but the whole thing was like cognized in seed form or something.
So I was I'd shown up at the computer lab. I was in my college computer lab, and I'd made this commitment. So I was going to write my poem, and yeah, it really just what happened and what still happens is it's like I'm retuned to a different different frequency. It's like there's a buzz that comes over me, and the words just start coming. And it kind of feels like they're pouring through, and so that's how it felt. And there was kind of an urgency to it, and I just needed to write it down as quickly as I could. And anymore, what I've learned is that if I don't do that, if I don't find a pen or if I don't get to a computer, like it's gone. The magic is gone. I can remember the basic theme of the poem, but there's no life to it.
Do you fiddle with it and tweak it and refine it, or does it you just pretty much write it down the way it came and that's it?
Yeah, good question. Just ever so slightly, not much at all. So this book of poems that I just put out, well, both of them are this way, but this book that I just put out today, Let Us Dance, it's all poems that have come through in the last 7 months. And for every poem that came through, probably 5 to 10 others have, but the ones in this book are the ones that needed almost no edits at all.
So the best ones tend not to need edits.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
And like when you feel a poem coming, is it sort of like, the beginnings of labor pains, or do you get a tingling in your toes? Or I mean, what is there some kind of like feeling like, oh, here comes one?
It's always really exciting when one comes, and they come a lot, so it's a very familiar feeling. Yeah, there's a tingle. There's a full body tingle to it.
And you're not trying to make it come. You're just kind of like minding your own business, and all of a sudden, here comes a poem.
Totally, exactly. Yeah. I've noticed walking can bring them on, though. Walking and being in the shower can also bring them on. And driving also. And and there's just there's an urgency to it, and almost a slight, the experience is very pleasant.
Yeah.
But there's an urgency to it, and it would be a little uncomfortable to not write it down.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Speaking of taking a shower, I was taking a shower a couple of hours ago, and I was listening to the radio, and they had a story on NPR about this guy who had suffered some kind of brain injury, and he was perfectly articulate. He could talk perfectly well. But what happened was he suddenly could play the piano and had never played before.
Oh.
And they were playing stuff that he plays, and it was fantastic, complicated, beautiful stuff. I mean, he took his mother into a music store, and he sat down at a piano and just started playing this amazing stuff. And the salesperson in the store came over and said, "Wow, how long have you been playing?" He said, "Oh, just a few hours."
Oh my God.
And so that's, where does that come from? And in the case of poems, where does that come from? I mean, do you feel like there's some kind of transcendent or celestial source of intelligence or intelligences, like I guess a muse is supposed to be, like some higher being that is your muse, or what?
Yes. Yes. So it feels like there's a mingling of me, my just spirit, I guess, and something else. Because if I were just to try to sit down and write a poem right now, it wouldn't be that great. There wouldn't be that much to it. So it definitely feels that way. And you asked, like, what is that? How do you crack that open? Like, how do you access that? And I don't know if there's any kind of formula to that, but before this cracked open in me, I was in really a place of acute suffering, and felt that there was no space in the world where I could share my heart and my voice authentically. And that was really my primary desire in life, was to be able to do that. But I had all kinds of just conditioning and just repressive tendencies. So I was unable to do that, and it was so painful. So I feel like I was kind of walking around constantly, though, with this deep prayer of, like, please, I need to be able to do this. And so it kind of, in some ways, I think it had to do with that. Just a really, really deep desire for really potent, true, deepest level connection with something.
Yeah. I have a feeling that everybody in the world has sort of genius locked up in them.
Nice.
And sort of the routines and the pressures of the world kind of kills that genius, or represses it or dampens it down. And there's this sort of deep repressed yearning, which I think perhaps accounts for a lot of the suffering people experience, because they know, they're like multimillionaires who are just begging for change on the street,
Mm-hmm. Yes. And perfectionism too has, I think, a lot to do with kind of clamping that down. There's kind of, in my experience, sort of a cracking open to a willingness to, get out of control to some degree, to allow that to happen. And there's also, I think, just such a deep preciousness about this, where the genius lies. It's I think our most intimate self, and we so want that to be beautifully received. And then we have, trauma around ways people have related to our creative expression in the past.
In other words, they told you to go get a job as an accountant or something and forget all this poetry stuff and that kind of thing.
Yeah. But I agree with you. I really do think that we all have some kind of genius that wants to express itself in its unique way, that all of us have that.
Yeah. I often, when I think along these lines, I always extrapolate it out and think, what would the world be like if everybody in the world unlocked their full genius, their full potential? The world would be so radically different.
Oh, totally. Yes. Well said. I have a poem that kind of speaks to that.
Oh,
Should
let's
I read
do
it?
that. Yeah, what's the name?
It's actually not one of the ones we have written down.
Okay,
but,
doesn't matter.
I'll just go with it. Okay, it's called Probing Joy.
Which book is this from?
This is from Let Us Dance.
Okay, your new one.
Okay. Probing Joy. I can't keep quiet when there are still so many hearts that need resuscitation, so much buried power and truth, so many gifts to be resurrected. The richness waiting in you to be tapped is the inspired ink into which I dip my pen. Like a scientist who cannot stop penetrating new frontiers of this universe, my pen cannot stop probing the farthest reaches of joy, to prove again and again there are countless dimensions of you yet to be discovered. I cannot stop revealing the evidence that within every darkness can be found universes of whirling light.
Great. Love it.
Thanks.
And, on this theme of everybody having repressed genius, I think a lot of people sort of externalize the blame, although perhaps some of it can be externalized. In other words, they might say, well, it was my parents, or it was the educational system, or it's the government, or it's the deep state, or, whatever. And maybe there's some blame to be assigned to external influences, but ultimately, you can take it from here. Ultimately, I think we're the ones who have to kind of take the initiative to unlock that inner potentiality, no matter no matter why it has been locked up.
Yes. Yeah, and actually the degrees of to which I felt really stifled and stymied with this deep level authentic expression, like the suffering of all that, and just my lack of contact with that is really, I think, it was like my voice was in this incubation period. And now that it's busted out, like it does so with such gusto and such joy and such verve and excitement and such a deep belief, that this capacity exists in all people. And just a really potent desire to share that. And I don't know that I would have had that without all of those beautiful benefits, without the struggle of not having that for so long.
Yeah, I mean, if you help a chick out of its egg, you're probably going to kill it. Or if you help a caterpillar out of the butterfly out of the chrysalis.
Yes.
So, and there's a certain struggle in kind of having to make that effort to escape that confinement oneself, but you end up, at least in these examples, the little being ends up healthier as a result, or ends up living as a result. So do you kind of see? I mean, were there birth pains associated with this blossoming of creativity? Did you have to go through some kind of purgatory in order to clear stuff out?
Oh, hell yeah. Major. Yeah. So my 20s, I'm 32 now, and my 20s was just this really beautiful gauntlet of just intensely healing, and to heal means to encounter your pain, is the way I describe it, and move through it, and anyhow, just intense healing and then intense creativity.
Were you doing spiritual practices and seeking and reading and what, or what?
Mostly it was embodied practices of
such as
hypnotherapy was my primary tool.
Oh, that's right. You became a professional hypnotherapist. Right. Yeah.
Yep, but personally too, I just would use that all the time.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of my 20s hypnotized.
Huh.
And and it was so interesting, because sometimes you said, does the muse feel like it comes from a celestial kind of out there, maybe source or something? But then also when I would crack open my heart really, and do a big cathartic release, almost always under that would be a poem. Yeah. So that, and then also more recently, when I decided to publish this book, it was like this rapid fire skin shedding and burning through all the reasons that I hadn't published it before, of which there were many, all kinds of limiting assumptions and kind of just old frameworks that I needed to move through. And that is not comfortable. And that's another reason why, so many of us don't pursue the things we most care about, is because it's painful. It is painful. Totally worthwhile, but there's pain associated with it.
Did when you were being hypnotized a lot, and well, explain a little bit what that experience was like. I mean,
Sure.
Most people don't probably have a really clear understanding, and I've never been hypnotized. And
Oh,
is it
yeah.
like a deep meditative state, or was it for you where you
Mm.
kind of like, go ahead, you elaborate.
Sure. Yeah, well, I like to say that I had a boyfriend in high school whose mom was a hypnotherapist, and she was always like trying to convince me to get sessions. And I thought she was so like I thought it was sounded so wacky. Like I wasn't really exposed to alternative modes of therapy at all until I was. And but then yeah, so I like to say that because I think a lot of people have all kinds of kind of wacky assumptions of about what hypnotherapy is or can do, and I empathize with that.
Yeah, you think about
But
stage hypnotists and all who make
yeah,
people cluck like a
exactly.
chicken or something.
Exactly. It can feel like manipulative and stuff.
Yeah.
But then yeah, I was in such an acute, just a desperate and acute, constant state of distress that I became more open to anything that might help.
Why were you in such
And
a state of distress?
well, I just like I hadn't been able to. I related to my suffering as though there was something wrong with me, and I didn't know how to share my pain with others. And I'm a sensitive, perceptive person who just I really need to live in a profoundly transparent and open and truthful, like embodied truthful way. And I didn't know how to do that. So it was agony.
And that was causing the suffering, yeah.
Oh yeah. And so one of my good friends told me about a mutual friend who'd been trying hypnotherapy, and I got this hypnotherapist number right away, and I did a long distance session with him that night, and that first session had transformed my life. Yeah, so basically, it's an extremely beautiful method of hypnotherapy that really affirms that we all have an essential inherent part of us that has always been healthy and happy and whole and inherently worthy of love and acceptance. So that's kind of the premise, and that we all have all the wisdom within us that we need to heal. And so I got in touch with that part of myself, and through getting in touch with this part of myself that was not only not broken, but inherently just totally worthy of love, just really dismantled so much. And for the first time in my adult life, my consciousness was kind of unlocked from all these just pain stories. And it was able to sink deeper into true connection with a much more true self. So it's really a process of, I think all healing is really a process of the development of consciousness. Mm-hmm.
It sounds a lot like, my experience with meditation. It's just a different way of, different angle of going deep, and exploring
Yes.
those finer levels and of clearing out the detritus that is accumulated. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Interesting. This theme that we brought up a couple of times now keeps coming back, which is that the suffering of there's a word in the or phrase in the Brahma Sutras or someplace. It says there's no joy in smallness, and I keep, as I'm talking to you, I keep thinking of that being constricted, being forced to run on one cylinder when you're an 8-cylinder engine
Yes.
causes pain. And,
Yes.
you think about the opioid epidemic and all, people are just, in pain because they're bottled up. They can't express their full potential, and they take the wrong angle, trying to just blot
Yes.
things out even more. But I think it's a core issue.
Yeah. Should I read a poem about that?
Yeah, please. Is it one we have down, or just you want to grab one?
We have it. It's just about encouraging the fullness
Yeah.
of self, and it's called "I'm Too Much."
Got it.
This one reads well.
Uh-huh.
Okay, let me make sure I have the right. Yeah, and there's a lot of, societal ideas about being too much and too big and arrogant and
Yeah.
whatever.
Too big for your
so
britches.
This is kind of too big for your britches. And of course, we don't want to, but when we're just all that we are and sharing our full light, it's beautiful and it's nourishing to others. It doesn't take from others. And so this poem is just reframing and reclaiming the phrase, I am too much. Here we go.
Yep.
I'll let the poem speak for itself. I am too much. It's time to reframe and reclaim the phrase, I am too much. It's time to practice being okay with it, lathering ourselves in it and basking in all that we are. Here goes. I'm too much. I want to devour suns for breakfast and kiss the center of every heart. I'm too much for niceties. All I want is to experience the inmost nectar of the soul. I'm too much. I'm divorcing myself from the timid, ongoingly gray life of a repressed sky. Let's dive into the center of our storms. I'm too much for small ideologies to encourage me to live in the margins of the heart on the outskirts of life. I'm too much to be appropriately tipsy. I want to pop the cork off this world and make all things intoxicated with glee. I'm too much. I want to stalk God all the way home to the center of every beauty and sweetness. Go forth, glorious, too much ones, and pour your rivers of light that quench the world. Go forth and feed every ravenous soul from the generous table of your heart, knowing your essence is one of feast, not famine. Go forth and live in a way that reminds people how abundantly luminous each night is, bedecked in her stars. Let your too muchness be your devotion. God, after all, is the queen of too much, polyamorous with every religion and every heart as she is, and she does not stop making her point after only one galaxy. Yes, by all means, be too much. Your heart was made to be a gong, not a penny whistle. Your beauty is a downpour, not a sprinkle. Your voice is a nourishing meal for this hungry world, not a garnish. Your too much has been a tight judgment that tries to tie down your vastness and constrain the cosmos within you. Reclaim it and pour forth your stars. Reclaim it and become just the right size to hold the universe.
Ah, that is so good.
Thank you.
Yeah. The whole notion of enlightenment and all the, or of realizing one's essential nature as Brahman. Brahman actually means great. That's what the Sanskrit word means. The word means the great. And the idea is that, you engulf the universe. I mean, that which you are, the universe is a speck of dust within that vastness, or that greatness.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool. I don't mean to sound so dry and intellectual in response to these, but they just remind me of these types of things,
They ping other thoughts. That's fantastic.
They do. And and obviously you're capturing something which the saints and sages had, experienced and understood and written down in various scriptures and so on. So it's a perennial wisdom, and you're expressing it beautifully.
Thank you so much, Rick.
Yeah. I remember I listened to a couple of interviews, like the one Mary Reed did with you, I think, and another one or two. And there was one where you said you felt like the top of your head was going to blow off or something because there was so much energy coming through. I mean, has that settled down and been integrated?
That kind of, yes, it has. So about a couple of months ago, I just really had to have a talking to with this muse.
Yeah.
And I told it I needed a little bit of a vacation. And it's actually calmed down a little bit since then. But really, wow. So the intense feeling where it actually started to hurt a little bit was when it was right in the beginning stages of publishing this book, Susceptible to Light. And that was when I was going on these nightly night walks and asking Hafez for inspiration. And it was just really, it was torrential. It felt like a tap was just turned on full blast.
Kind of sounds like
Yeah.
your crown chakra is opening or something.
Yes.
Do you kind of feel like, in a way, that you're a kind of a sense organ of the infinite, or a one of God's appendages serving a particular function?
Oh, wow, that's a really nice way to think of it. I'm really grateful. I love this experience so much. And my experience of my poetry is I have such incredible trust in it. Whereas I struggle with plenty of self-doubt in other areas, but with poetry, it's just like, I just completely trust it. And I know it needs to be shared, and that there's value in sharing that. And I'm so grateful for that experience. And then I've worked really hard. I've really done a tremendous amount of just being on this path, which is messy and hard and intense, but of just really trying to keep my heart open, and then going into all the reasons it's closed, and then opening it again. So there's something about that I think, can be more universalized. Like, I think blessings and just cool grace can come to people from doing that. But I don't think of myself as like, I don't know. I don't think I've gotten too lofty about thinking of myself.
I'm not saying that you think you're God's gift to humanity or something, but just that, I mean, I have the same sense. You're kind of a servant, and you're serving a particular function, within your particular skill set, and it's having an influence on the world. And because you're doing that, it's like the powers that be, the gods or whatever, they say, okay, we got a live one here. Let's give her some juice,
Yes. Yes. And it has, I mean, it's intensified so much since I started taking it seriously.
Yeah.
And validating the process more, as I did when I started publishing my work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we haven't mentioned it, but you're a young mother. You have, how old are your kids?
4 and 1.
4 and 1. So it's not like you're sitting around twiddling your thumbs. You probably got a lot to do with them.
Yes.
And husband, what does your husband do?
He's an audio engineer.
Oh, great. Wow.
Yeah, so he helped me a lot with the setup today.
It's handy.
Yes.
And, I imagine that all of that helps to open your heart. You mentioned trying to keep your heart open. I'm sure that they are nice little heart openers.
Yeah. I'll just be really transparent about it. Parenting is hard for me.
Is it?
They are heart openers, and they're my motivation to open my heart more than anything else. But also, like, do you have kids,
No,
Rick?
just animals.
Okay, right on. Yeah, I mean, not everyone feels this way, but for me, kids bring it. It brings it all up. Like, it surfaces all the limitations that want to come up to be cleared, because you do just want to be, perfect unconditional love for your kids. And so all the escapist tendencies and all the issues with intimacy and all of that surfaces. So I call it just accelerated growth, being a parent, because there's more, there's more motivation to do the work, but it also, like, it's deeply humbling because it just puts your face in it.
Yeah. I mean, relationships of all kinds kind of put your face in it. And
yes.
But
yes.
I don't think that they are, I mean, and sometimes, people with a monastic inclination regard that as a quagmire that serious spiritual seekers should avoid. But I think for the vast majority of people, the dog is having a coughing fit here. Come on. For the vast majority of people, it's exactly what we need.
Yeah.
And without that, you can become very self-absorbed and idiosyncratic, and
Yeah.
just sort of, you don't have the mirror that you need to reflect your stuff back to you.
Yes. You said it. Yes. And kids are such fine-tuned mirrors.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, yep.
Yeah. Have your kids inspired any poems?
No.
Don't have any
Actually,
kid poems?
maybe one or two. Maybe they're not in the book.
Uh-huh.
No, I don't feel that anything really inspires my poems. Like I've had in the past, a couple of people have asked me to write poems for, this or that, custom written poems, and it feels awkward.
So if you're asked to be the poet for the next presidential inauguration, you'll decline?
No, I would accept. And I would just read one of the poems that came through on its own that that felt like it most fit the occasion.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, you want to read another one now?
Sure, yeah. I'll read the one that really took off in quite a wild way, and is really, I have a lot to thank it for why I'm here with you right now. It's what connected me with Mary Reed, and it's also it just went viral.
What's
Went really
what's that
viral.
one called?
It's called The Worst Thing.
Oh yeah, here it is. Good.
And I'll just share a little bit before I read it. So before sharing this poem, I would get 35 likes on my poems on Facebook, and 50 was amazing, and 3 people sharing it was really cool, and stuff like that. And so then I shared this one, and it 30,000 people shared it.
Wow, it took off.
And just totally took off. And it's so interesting, one person in particular shared this poem, and 10,000 people found it on her page. And then I got curious the other day, and I went back to her page to look at other posts, and her other posts get 10 likes or whatever. And I'm not sharing that because it was just, every single thing about this process was so the forces of the universe were this is happening. And it all just went. So anyway, I'm so grateful for this poem. So grateful. Wouldn't have connected with Daniel Ladinsky. This is the one. So The Worst Thing.
And I don't know. Yeah, I guess we in the intro we explained who Daniel Ladinsky is.
Yeah, I can talk more about that. That's a really cool story.
Okay, later on after we do this.
Later on. Sure. Okay.
Okay.
So The Worst Thing. The worst thing we ever did was put God in the sky out of reach, pulling the divinity from the leaf, sifting out the holy from our bones, insisting God isn't bursting dazzlement through everything we've made a hard commitment to see as ordinary, stripping the sacred from everywhere to put in a cloud man elsewhere, prying closeness from your heart. The worst thing we ever did was take the dance and the song out of prayer, made it sit up straight and cross its legs, removed it of rejoicing, wiped clean its hip sway, its questions, its ecstatic yowl, its tears. The worst thing we ever did is pretend God isn't the easiest thing in this universe, available to every soul in every breath.
Great. Love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll send you a song later. If I had thought of it, we could even have played it now, but I don't have it queued up. But it's called Everything is Holy Now. And I forget the name of the songwriter. But basically he talks about, when he was a boy at school, going to church, that God was this, distant thing. And now everything is holy, every leaf, every bird song, everything. And that I think is really the reality. I think the whole universe would come to a screeching halt if God were not functional in every little subatomic particle.
Yes.
It's,
Wow. Yes.
yeah. Next week, I'm going to interview a guy about intelligent design, which I had a sort of a skeptical attitude toward, because it has this sort of pseudo-scientific connotation, but he's right on. I mean, it's like he explains in great detail scientifically how we really couldn't have a universe if there were not some
Wow.
guiding intelligence.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real paradigm. It's a way of living and relating to all things, this othering of God and outsideing God. And we are disconnected from our bodies, ourselves, our wisdom, everything. There's an alienation of experience in this paradigm. And that's one that my poetry is really doing a lot to try to crack open.
Yeah. And there's a kind of a popular bias against it. I mean, people are ostracized and ridiculed for speaking the way we're speaking right now in certain circles, in scientific circles, and many others. There's, the new atheists are all the rage and very popular. Sam Harris and Daniel Dennett and people like that. So there's some kind of a theme in the culture that feels that appreciating everything as holy is somehow old-fashioned and superstitious or something like that.
There's so much, and just all the conditioning that we have around, at least in our society, around opening our heart. Because all the sacred scriptures talk about the heart as there's just something about the heart that's important. That's the seat of God, whatever. But then, vulnerability. But the thing is, open your heart sounds like such a nice thing to say, but we don't, because there's so much pain in there, and there's so much to move through, but there's so many ideas that we're not allowed to feel. We're not allowed to go into all the feelings that we find when we really do open our heart and connect with what's in there. And there's so much beauty and wisdom in there, and there's also pain, and there's sort of like we're allowed to get to the beauty and the wisdom and the good stuff, but the pain is too much, or it's whatever, So I think there is a lot in all kinds of ways that shuts us down from really connecting with this implanted, divinity within us, and then when our heart is shut down, we're screwed from connecting with beauty and love. That's I do think is built into the natural, every part of the natural world. Yeah.
Well, let's play with this one for a few minutes. I mean,
sure.
Yeah. As you're saying that, I was thinking of crabs and snails and conchas and things like that who need their shell. They would be so vulnerable without their shell. But they also have to sort of venture out of it in order to get food and stuff. And I don't know how good of an analogy that is for human beings, but you can see why hearts get shut down, because
of course
that we're battered by so much, and we need to protect that tender thing. But then on the other hand, that entraps us. Because as we've been saying earlier, we're meant to be, the universe. We're meant to be vast, and yet we get hung up in a little shell. So how does one navigate the metamorphosis, such that one can be utterly open and yet not vulnerable in the sense of being damaged by that openness?
That's such a good question. Yeah. Well, how to open it all in the first place? I feel like we just really need either a very deeply safe environment, or even just another person around us that can kind of, because the reason that we don't open to the hard stuff or share our full stuff is because it's been presented to us as if we're struggling too much, or if we're whatever isn't, we've been told isn't acceptable, that will be a liability to our belonging. And we're so wired for belonging that then we just we need to play these roles that we think will get us the belonging that we also want. So we need people we need to know that it's safe to go into our messy, painful stuff, and that people will still just totally cherish us and love us. And or for me with hypnotherapy, I was able in that state to create a safe enough place inside of myself and really connect with this part of me that was like, oh, I'm good actually. There's in the deepest level, I'm okay. And that didn't obliterate all of my, limitations and foibles and shadows and things, but it actually allowed me to encounter them and move through them rather than just stay stuck in them because I thought they were me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned hypnotherapy, because I was thinking, there are processes which enable a person to, simultaneously culture both strength and sensitivity. As a matter of fact, a few weeks ago, I interviewed Anita Morjani, and her new book is called Sensitive is the New Strong.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of a contradiction in terms, because sensitive seems vulnerable, and how could sensitive be strong? But I think we can perhaps understand how it could be, and maybe we could even elaborate the point a bit.
I would love to talk about that point. Yes, I really deeply, deeply believe that. Sensitive can mean sensitive to truth, and I think a synonym for sensitive can be just being very perceptive, and being sensitive to when things aren't aligned with truth, and feeling like, oh, that hurts, because we are so sensitive to love and truth, and that's so important. And then it's a journey in just finding a way to address those things that is in a strong way, that isn't coming from like being victimized by those things, but then we can speak about them. I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, this image comes to my mind of, the strong man. He's like the bully. Man, get out of my way. He barges his way through the crowd. Nobody gets in his way, and it doesn't matter who he tramples on. He's strong. But really, such a person is weak. They're just expressing a sort of a inner inadequacy that they're trying to compensate for by being a big bully. And but it's really been the sense. I mean, and there have been such people who have conquered nations and who have done big things on the world stage. But I think the people we most admire, the great geniuses, the scientists, the composers, the poets, are people who were acutely sensitive, and they're the ones who really tapped into some deeper genius and whose work has stood the test of time.
And and I think it feels safer to be open when you know that we also as humans have the capacity to move through pain. And so then when we find tools to be able to do that, then we're more resilient, and I think we're just not as afraid of what comes at us. So it's easier to just, here I am, world. And I think also when we really can open our heart in that sensitive and strong way, that I don't know, we challenge the assumption that we will be hurt.
Yeah.
And maybe we won't be as much as we once thought.
No, I know what you mean.
I
was just reading something yesterday, I think, on Susanna Marie's Facebook page. She wrote this thing about how she's been on Back Gap, about how when the individual sense of self drops off and is no longer predominant, and one kind of knows oneself as sort of cosmic being, or then everything is passing through you.
Yes.
The good, the bad, and the ugly, but it doesn't shake your status as cosmic being. There's
Totally.
there's a saying that
Yeah,
Brahman is the eater of everything, the container of everything. It has the capacity to contain all the extremes of the universe without in itself being perturbed.
Totally. I have a good poem for this
Oh
moment.
boy.
Shall I?
Yeah. Which one?
Okay. Actually, it's another one that I didn't give you. I had a really cool experience recently. I said a prayer. This whole journey too has just been an incredible experiment and experience with prayer. And I said a prayer recently. It was like, I want to level up. I wanted to get out of, kind of bust out of some old patterns. And then like the next day, this lady reached out to me who I'd never met, who was like, hey, I found your poetry, and can I give you a 4-hour session of this, like, I don't know, type of healing I'd never heard of? And I was like, okay. And it was for free. So I was like, oh, sure, okay. And it was incredibly potent and powerful. And there have been really 2 times in my life where I've had these extremely profound kind of just I am kind of experiencing the I am from a totally different vantage point. And this was one of those. This was about 2 months ago. And then this poem came out right after. It's called There's an Essence. There's an essence within you that can neither be enhanced nor diminished. It spans universes and embraces the minuscule, the infinitesimal. It is infinite in the way that the numbers between 0 and 1 are infinite, which is completely and wondrously eternally satisfying, and yet allows for infinitely more infinities. It is the exaltation of the hermit crab when it ceases to need to scurry from shell to shell to find respite. This essence dips into pools of intergalactic radiance for play and restoration. It tickles the stars and high-fives the suns. It has no need to bypass the trappings of the small mind, but nor does it take them too seriously. There is nothing to prove or do or please to earn this. This is your birthright that I solemnly swear, no, joyfully exclaim, all humanity is growing into.
That's great.
Thank you.
Reminds me of another Vedic saying. It goes, Ano Raniyan Mahato Mahiyan, which means smaller than the smallest, bigger than the biggest.
Yep. Yeah. That was a very, very profound experience. The main thing I came away with was that first line, that there's an essence within us that can neither be enhanced nor diminished. It's just completely satisfied in its own nature. Like, there's just nothing you have to do to get to exactly where you want to be. And that also this inherent essence is just sown with the also profoundly satisfying experience of connection. Like, that there is nothing, again, that you need to do or try for to earn or win connection, but it's just, we just have it within us and can drink it in and totally enjoy it. So
if you have infinity and subtract 100 from it, you still have infinity. If you add 100 to it, you still have infinity.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So what were you saying about Daniel Ladinsky? There was some interesting story about him.
Yes. So mostly just, he was really he's my primary poetic inspiration. He's really the only poet that I feel has influenced my work. And then I bought these 2 books of his because I liked the format and I needed ideas for my books. And then, so basically Daniel Ladinsky does all of the English renderings of Hafez poetry, which is originally written in Farsi.
So does he translate from the Farsi?
No, so he actually doesn't even speak Farsi, but he uses the he uses the translations, and then he's an incredible poet in and of his own self, and he had a mystical experience with Hafez that inspired his writing, and so he kind of takes the translations and brings them, kind of infuses them with what he believes is the original kind of spirit, intended spirit.
Seems like Hafez is messing with people. First he messed with Daniel, then he messed with you.
I think he's a total trickster, yeah. And so anyway, so I bought these books that are Hafez books rendered by Daniel Ladinsky, and that's really what started cracking this process open. And so, yeah, after 3 weeks of intense and joyful, just conversation with Hafez, like Daniel Ladinsky, I get an email from him in my inbox. Which
how did he even get your email?
I have no idea. Actually, I don't think I've even asked him. I should ask. So he found me and he said, "Hey, Shalane, I found your book. Congratulations. It seems like it's doing really phenomenally well, even internationally." And just, he was so generous and kind and celebratory. And then I had used a quote of his in my Amazon description that I had miscited. So he said, and, he was totally relaxed about it. He just said, this was late December. So he said, sometime next year at your leisure, just if you could amend that. So then I wrote him back this like totally unfiltered email, because I was in just this complete state of awe that he had reached out to me after I had been praying to Hafez. And I just told him the whole story. I said, "Oh my God, Daniel, I've got to tell you this whole story." So I did, and I told him I had this A team in the dead authors, and Hafez was in charge of them. And, and I sent him a poem that I felt was particularly inspired by Hafez. And then it was my commitment to myself to just really ask for the things that I wanted. And so I said, "Daniel, while I have you, could I send you my book? And if you're genuinely moved to do it, would you consider endorsing it?" So I just sent that off on a wing and a prayer. I assumed he had all this fan mail, that he might never respond to me, whatever. And then that night, I got an email back from him that said, "So Shalane, this is strange on so many levels, because I rarely reach out to people. People miscite my work thousands of times every day. So it must have been Hafez that nudged me to connect with you."
Yeah.
And he said, "And this is extremely rare. I've never done this before, but I just really feel that you and I need to co-author a book together."
That's cool.
So that was just like, it was like the skies opened, and it was like pure bliss. I just had this hysterical, moment.
So he wrote some kind of intro to one of your books, but are you actually going to co-author one with him?
So we've started, and then that just launched us into this extraordinary few months of intense collaboration. And we were both just inspiring each other. It was like this wild poetic dance. Like, we'd send each other like 20 emails a day. It was like a poem that kept evolving. And so we started working on a book together called Letters to and from a Young Poet. And there's a German poet, Rilke, classic called Letters to a Young Poet. So we were going to kind of spin off of that and modernize it, but it was going to be more back and forth. And we made really wonderful headway with that. And then we also started working on a book of haiku called Two Zucchinis Dancing. A sweet haiku from the kitchen. So it's all just haiku about food. And it was just so fun. It was the most exhilarating, joyful experience of my life. And then we also dabbled in some other ones. So those are still kind of shelved in terms of really bringing them all the way home for now. But yeah, he wrote me a foreword for my book, and he's just a good friend anymore.
That's great. That's exciting.
Yeah. It's really incredible. Not just that it happened, but really what was incredible about it was the way that it happened. Can I read that poem that I sent him?
Yeah, please. Do I have that one here?
I think you do. It's called Hafez Was Generous. And this is in Susceptible to Light. So this is the poems I'm reading are a mix. Some are from this book, some are from Let Us Dance. Okay. Hafez was generous. Hafez was generous. I asked him for help with my poetry, and he stuffed my heart with 1,000 suns, for starters. He poured a collection of instruments into my soul and announced, "Play." He spit-shined my inner eye that it might see wild magic everywhere, winking back at it. I asked Hafez for help with my poetry, and he responded, "It's about time you asked. I've been waiting with a stampede of muses to unleash upon you. I've been waiting with a cosmos of roses to hand to you, to bring forth even the shyest part of your love and get it dancing." I asked Hafez for help with my poetry. He said, "All poems already are, like luminous birds in the spirit realm. You simply must summon them." And he started wildly throwing bird food directly into my soul. There's a secret trapdoor in heaven. When you pull on that string, God topples down upon you. I asked Hafez for help with my poetry, and he pushed God out that door to land right on top of my heart.
That's great.
Thank you.
Really nice.
Thanks.
Do you mean this kind of literally? We've sort of touched on it, but you know, this new agey type people often think of there being sort of ascended masters, or you know, some celestial beings or whatever that are interceding in human affairs in various ways, and you know, perhaps using certain individuals as representatives of their intentions, or as mouthpieces through which they can speak. So do you literally feel like something like that is going on
With Hafez?
with Hafez or this A team you mentioned or whatever?
Well, it's so interesting. I mean, it's hard to deny it anymore.
Yeah, I'm not
because
poo-pooing the
just-
idea. I kind of believe it works that way, but I'm just sort of saying if you do.
Well, I'm not, you know, we have so many layers to us. And one part of me is like totally like, rah, let's ask, you know, dead poets for help. And then the other part of me is also like kind of stubbornly like, has doubt, you know, about the mystical and the things like that. And so, but yeah, any more after this experience, I'll say I find myself experimenting with it more.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's all I can really say. But I mean, you know, self-published poetry, I had essentially no connections with anybody. I had no marketing team. And just the way that this has expanded, it's hard to understand why things would have happened like this without some kind of influence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think the universe works that way personally.
But I kind of like not being certain about it. You
Yeah,
know, I think
no, that's good.
There's a dynamic edge to like, okay, I'm going to keep trying this. Let's see how it goes now. And getting information as we try these things. And so, yeah.
I have a lot of respect for the scientific method and for the relationship between science and spirituality. And I think they each possess qualities which the other needs. And, you know, and what spirituality needs from science is the sort of empirical, you know, a little bit skeptical, you know, not being, you know, blindly faithful kind of attitude, taking things as hypotheses which should be tested rather than things that you need to believe in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's very important. Yeah, I agree. And
then what science needs from spirituality is the whole toolkit of being able to explore these subtle dimensions, which, you know, materialist science doesn't have a clue about.
Yeah, totally.
Couple of questions came in, and anytime anything pops to mind or a poem you want to read, and just don't wait for me to ask you, just go for it. But now, does Mary Reed live in Washington, D.C.?
Bethesda, or
Bethesda?
not Bethesda, Maryland.
All right,
not Bethesda, Maryland, right on the border.
So I think this is from Mary. She says, it would be interesting to know about Chelan's spiritual upbringing.
Oh, sure. Sure, yeah. So I grew up in the Baha'i faith.
Oh, Baha'i, yeah. Seals and Crofts.
Yeah.
I used to love them.
Yeah, yeah. So, for those who aren't familiar with the Baha'i teachings, basically just really a beautiful worldview that all, let's see, uh, that a really unitive worldview that all people are inherently just very, very interconnected, and that for the kind of the crowning point of our maturity as human people is to be able to operate harmoniously in a worldwide as a global society, and and that all religions come from the same source, and that their purpose is to help humanity develop both spiritually and socially. So anyway, there's a lot of just real beauty there, and I'm so grateful for. I think it really helped me have a trajectory for my mind and heart, and it gave me even just the concept of God, and the concept of prayer. And yeah, but then also interestingly, what something that the Baha'i faith says, the Baha'i teachings say, is that that you can't inherit a religion from your parents. Like, it just doesn't work. And so no matter how beautiful your faith is, you really need to go through a process of just really finding your own relationship there. And so for the last 10 years or so also, I've been really in a process with that, and shedding a lot of pieces of that, and refinding some pieces.
That's a very nice, mature thing for a religion to say, because usually they're very possessive, and if
Yes.
you leave the fold, you're fallen, and so on.
Yeah, totally. Well, but then it's interesting. Like, I think a lot of people in the Baha'i community would do well to take that advice.
Yeah.
And so it's funny how our conditioning around religion, I guess, can even be a stronger player than the teachings themselves sometimes.
Sure.
So I don't know. And the community is continuing to evolve, which is wonderful. But I'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
Well, I think most people in every religion would do well to actually heed the advice of its founder, it's the exception rather than the rule.
Good point. Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting that you grew up in the Baha'i faith, because that came out of Persia, which is modern day Iran, and that's where Hafiz was.
Yeah,
Hafez.
that is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I don't know.
You were probably Hafez's wife in that life.
Maybe that would have been an interesting life. He was like exiled several times, and I'd have been down for that.
Maybe you were his mother. I don't know.
That's hilarious. Maybe I was him.
Yeah, that's what Irene just said. Why? What am I saying there? Of course, he could have been.
Yeah, women just stay women.
The title for this book, "Let Us Dance," actually was given to me. It was a really profound moment. I was on Baha'i pilgrimage when I was 21. The Baha'i Holy Land is in Israel, and it's a 9-day pilgrimage going to visit all these holy sites. And the place I was most excited to go to was Baha'u'llah, who's the founder of the Baha'i faith, his prison cell. And so this big group and I went to this prison cell, and there was always time to meditate and pray and such. And so I closed my eyes for really what felt like, and I've never had an experience like this one. I closed my eyes for what really felt like an instant. And I opened my eyes, and everyone had left the prison cell, and the door was closed. I was alone in this prison cell. And at that time, my relationship with the Baha'i faith was very complex. And really, I feel like the primary tension was like needing to listen to my own inner voice and intuition and guidance system, and wondering, was that okay? And anyway, so I opened my eyes. I was alone in this prison cell, and I really heard without ears, a very clear voice inside of me that I took to be Baha'u'llah. It said, "Let us dance." And what that communicated to me was just, I was invited to go on just a really authentic, dynamic journey with God. And it just cracked my heart open, and I started singing, and there were these amazing acoustics, and like I knew that was going to be the name of a book of poetry one day. Anyway, yeah,
That's fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah, experiences like that, I take them very seriously and
yeah, cool.
quite literally, but with a grain of salt. But that could have been Baha'u'llah. You know, I mean, I think that kind of thing has happened to so many people. I mean,
Yeah.
Muhammad, you know, I mean, had some kind of visitation from angels which cracked him open, and he kick-started his whole spiritual, trip that he went on, and that a lot. It's true of many. There are many examples throughout history. So this kind of stuff happens.
Yeah. And whether or not, it had an effect.
Yeah, for sure. That's really interesting.
So,
Do you ever figure out how
yeah.
long you had actually been in the cell with your eyes closed?
Well, it's interesting because there were a lot of Persians in my group, and they were like like they would like pray for so long in all these spots. And there were other times when I was really hoping to get some time alone, and it was like there's no way. So I imagine it was a while.
And you must have
just
gone
based on all
really
the
deep because you didn't even hear him leave.
Didn't hear him leave.
Yeah.
Didn't hear the door close. Nothing.
Wow.
It was bizarre.
That's really cool.
It was really bizarre. Yeah. And the trip to Israel came a month after you mentioned the guy with the brain trauma that started playing piano.
Right.
It happened a month after really surprise brain surgery that I had.
You had brain surgery?
Yeah, for an aneurysm in the central artery of my brain, and that they found accidentally.
Were you having symptoms, or they just somehow?
No.
Why did they?
No symptoms, no health issues.
They did a CT scan for some reason?
Yeah, I had a sort of a jaw issue, and I don't even know why it's so weird that I went to get an MRI for a jaw issue because it was pretty low key. It doesn't make sense. And they were like, "Oh, your jaw's fine, but you've got a blurry area in your brain, and it might be an aneurysm. You might want to follow up on that." And I did, and it was this gigantic aneurysm, and they said I wouldn't have lived to be 30. So that was just a very dramatic time in my life. And it was kind of shortly after all of that, too, for me, that poetry really like cracked open wide, and just interesting things that all play a part.
That is very interesting. Was it very deep in the brain?
It was in the central artery of my brain. It was behind my left eye. I've got an excellent scar from here to here.
Oh.
And it was pretty well in there.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was no joke.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm glad they found it.
Yeah, same.
Really? Okay, a few nice little questions come in here. Here's one from Andrea Gutfleisch in Mannheim, Germany. Where do I find this amazing poem? It really goes deep. Would love to read it again. Love to hear about how Shalon was unpacking her gift.
Which one? Which poem?
I'm not sure, but they're all amazing. So, you have 2 books, and a lot of your poems are on your Facebook page, and
Yes.
I will put links on your page on Batgap to both of your books on Amazon that people can just click on and go.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Oh, sure. They can get the physical one, or is it also a Kindle, or what?
Yep, it's an ebook. You can get it. So it's on both are on Amazon, and then also there will be signed copies of both books at my local independent mom-owned bookstore. It's called Waucoma Bookstore, Waucoma.
Out there in Oregon, you mean?
Yep, and it'd be really fun to blast them with sales. They're so great.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah.
So if everybody listening
so
could just fly to Oregon and buy it there, then
no, they ship them around the world.
Oh, they ship them. So send me information
them
about
around the
that,
world.
and I'll put that
I will.
on your book, on your page also.
Yep. And then I'd love to stay in touch too with listeners. I'm still sharing new poems pretty much every day.
Yeah.
So Facebook is the main platform I use for that.
Okay. Another thing you might want to do. I'm listening right now to a book on Audible, which.
Oh, cool.
From a guy I'm going to interview. And I said, if I have to read the book, I'm not going to get through it. But if you can send me an Audible version, I'll listen a couple hours a day. And so I'm doing that. I really enjoy it. So you could actually consider making versions of your books that you read.
I know I will down the road. There are two people that are doing that for me
Good.
at this time. So I think I'll use those until I like the idea of it being my voice reading them just because I know, they come from me. So but yes, that will happen for sure.
Good. Someone named Anwat Bradley in Santa Cruz. Any plans for audiobook versions of both your books soon? Hearing you recite your beautiful poetry sends the love, light, and joy vibrations straight to my heart. Thank you and bless you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so there's a sign from the universe.
Yeah, right.
And here's another question that came in from Angelica Colon in Tampa, Florida. Excuse me if I mispronounce names. Has Chelan experienced that? Chelan.
Almost.
I've been working on this.
Okay. By the end of our interview, you'll have it down.
We were saying before we started that I should just remember Shazam. So has Shazam experienced that consumption of certain foods or exposure to modern day noise like social media or TV has had a negative impact on her ability to download these poems? Interesting question. And equally, are there some beneficial practices or ways of living that can increase one's ability to be an open and clear channel?
Oh, what a good question.
Yeah, good one.
So, well, regarding the first, so sort of a two-part question, the last 7 months, I've lived off a steady diet of peanut butter toast and and hemp mochas.
Huh.
So I don't think so with the diet. And that's just because I was like just focusing on such a pace. Like it was like being a mother and writing poetry, and I just couldn't be bothered with food prep. So, I mean, I ate other things too, but that's to say that I don't think that's a factor for me. And then I've never consumed so much social media because I've just been in this intense, beautiful communication with people about my work. And, but Facebook, these things are tools and they can be used in all kinds of ways. And when you're putting out love and you're just not letting the stuff in that bothers you, you can just like hide people's posts and stuff. Like you can really just create a beautiful, nourishing virtual garden for your heart. So it has been that experience for me, being on Facebook. But then in terms of other practices, anything for me that just continues to open my heart and trying to grow in strength to be able to be more, like wisely vulnerable, like sharing, opening when it feels right. And so I do a lot of healing work of all kinds. So anything that really works for you, I think, to really allow you to like let go of old energies and perceptions that have been kind of stuck in you. That's profoundly helpful for me.
Yeah. And there are so many things. I mean, just as exemplified by all the people I've interviewed. I mean, there are just so many different paths and practices and teachers and teachings. And I just have the attitude of just finding what resonates with you, what works for you.
Yes, because it can be overwhelming. There's so many different methods of healing practices and meditation practices and this and that. So I think, doing your best to just start trying if that's what you're looking for, and then whatever works for you, keep going with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you need to sometimes dedicate yourself to something and not just be not be a dilettante that just flits from one thing to the next. But on the other hand, if you dig your heels in and just stick with one thing that isn't working and just persist with it for years and years, you could actually waste time. So you have to kind of find the balance.
Yes.
Mirabai Starr gave a nice talk one time called Bees in the Garden, and how she felt that, the way bees go from flower to flower and extract nectar from each one, that, we can do that as spiritual practitioners without being dilettantes, without being superficial dabblers.
Yeah. Cool.
Want to read another poem?
Yeah, let me do that. Let's see, I've got all these poems flagged. Maybe I'll just open to one of them. Oh, this one actually feels appropriate. Um, yeah. So there was a time when I thought I really needed to, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this either, but when I really thought I needed to read all these sacred scriptures and I needed to be like very well versed intellectually to have, like, I guess, to merit to be worthy of like spiritual joy, I guess. So this poem kind of speaks to that. It's called Name excuse me. It's called Name Drop Gods. Okay. For years I thought I had to name drop Hindu gods for my poetry to be valid, but I hadn't really met any yet. I thought I needed to read all the sacred scriptures, but they were all so dense and cumbersome. Perhaps if I listed a couple yoga pose names, yes, any kind of Sanskrit must be the key to making my words spiritual and enlightened. Be a bit more esoteric, Shalane, a bit harder to unravel. Make your poetry a necklace of tangled prayer beads. Your readers will want to extract God more from your poetry for not being able to access it. Well, thank God all that changed. And thank God it turns out all scripture, every spiritual encounter, every holy ordinance is repeating the same universal simplicity over and over and over. It's either saying, open your heart or nothing at all. And I think I think there can be a really beautiful thirst for knowledge. And that can be a very beautiful and enlivening thing. But then I think there's another way to relate to the kind of academic pursuit of spirituality where it is kind of like putting our destination like out there. Like if we read enough, we'll, so that's the one I'm speaking to there.
Yeah. Also, it's a personal proclivity kind of thing. I mean, some people are inclined to do certain things and some people are inclined to do others. But I think a universal thing is that there really has to be the experiential component, whether or not you garnish it with intellectual understandings. The experience is really what those understandings are all about anyway, so you should make sure to get that.
Yep. And some intellectual understandings can unlock us and open us to that experience.
Yeah.
But then there can just be like a collecting of intellectual experience that doesn't necessarily get us where we want to go.
Yeah, I'd say they serve a couple of functions. One is to just alert us to the fact that certain possibilities exist, which we might not otherwise be aware of. And another is to kind of safeguard the path in a way so that we don't mistake some certain experience for something else, or have a certain level of experience and assume we're finished, for instance, which I've actually heard some people say. Whereas if we had a little bit better understanding, we realize there's so much more.
Yeah. So I guess, a harmonious relationship between the conceptual and the experiential is a nice way to go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kind of like we could say, somebody, there's a cook named Bobby Flay, and he's on TV. He has his own TV show, and he's really good. And there's a really good cook has a good balance between a lot of knowledge about cooking and also kind of a intuitive, creative approach to it, so that he's not strictly bound by that knowledge.
Yeah, and I feel I enjoy kind of just being an advocate for the experiential way, and more of my poetry is geared toward that because I don't think it gets enough cred or enough like just really potent advocacy about like just this process of experienced spirituality or embodied spirituality, you could say.
Yeah.
So I like talking about that.
Let's just see here. Yeah, maybe you could read one or more of these. These kind of jumped out at me. The Sacred Wears a Good Costume, Heart Warriors, or Our Great Cocoon. Maybe you feel inclined to read one or another of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Well, I'll read The Sacred Wears a Good Costume.
Okay.
For starters, anyway. And I'll also plug this dear friend, Mary Reed, our mutual connection. She's going to put out an incredible film sometime in the nearish future, and my poetry will be part of that film, and this will be in there. This one. The sacred wears a good costume. The sacred wears a good costume. She loves to dress up as the ordinary. Sometimes, like a queen in peasant clothes, she cloaks herself in the mundane to get a break from all that fawning. So how do you know it's her in there? Look closer at things when you can, and to your heart she'll give a certain knowing wink.
That's nice. For those who were just listening to the audio, Shalane just winked.
I'm actually not a good winker. I shouldn't have
You did okay.
tried that.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thanks. Can only wink with my right eye.
Oh, because of the brain surgery?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
Oh.
I think it's just a, can you wink with both? Oh, you
Yeah,
can.
I can. Uh-huh.
Nice. What a great capacity. Can you raise both eyebrows?
Yeah, I can.
I mean, one at a time.
Oh,
I
I don't think so. No, I can't do that.
Okay, I can only raise
I
my
can
left.
scrunch up one side of my face. See that?
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
It's my mother used to call that my buffalo face because we visited relatives in Buffalo, and I started doing it then. And
Oh, funny. Can you frown? Some people can't frown.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, that's not much of a. That's more of a scowl, but you can't do the downturn lip.
No, you try that. Show me that.
Oh.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, that was a good poem, The Great Cocoon. It kind of harkens back to our theme of God hiding in plain sight. We didn't use that exact phrase, but God sort of being. Well, there's a nice phrase. God is in everything, and everything is in God. It works both ways, but I feel it's literally true, and that everything. I mean, this kombucha bottle or whatever. If you could see it in its true nature, you'd be looking at God. God's not.
Yeah,
he's not some puppeteer off on some cloud, pulling strings.
Yes.
He's totally infused into everything. And
No, and isn't it amazing how dense we can be? That this quality of divinity can be everywhere, and we can have such blinders on it. Such an interesting dynamic, huh?
it's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, the power of Maya, the power of illusion. It deludes God herself, because if God is really the ultimate and complete and all-pervading reality, then we're God, and yet we've forgotten it. So somehow we're God, having forgotten who we are or what we are.
Yeah, and it's a juicy waking up experience, though. Let me read a poem. This is called "I No Longer Pray," and it's kind of touches on this. It's so I was just really frustrated with prayer all my life. Like, it just felt kind of abstract and vague. Like, is anybody out there?
Yeah, right.
Is anybody listening to me? Like, maybe something would happen in some, just very diluted, very vague way. I didn't feel connected to it intensely or potently. And I was frustrated with that. And I also felt like, if there is something that works, if there is a universal force or a network in which we can connect with that and ask for our soul's desires, or ask for help or whatever, like that's the master key, and it's free and it's universal. And like, so I really wanted to tap the power of prayer and just didn't really have a clue. But I've had some just really extraordinary, prayer experiences, just really being direct with God, really being about all the things, my anger with God, my frustrations, my desires. And this experience in the last 7 months was my first time of really feeling like I was plugged in, and like things were actually being received and shifting because of these prayers. So here we go. This is called "I No Longer Pray." I no longer pray. Now I drink dark chocolate and let the moon sing to me. I no longer pray. I let my ancestors dance through my hips at the slightest provocation. I no longer pray. I go to the river and howl my ancient pain into the current. I no longer pray. I ache, I desire, I say yes to my longing. I no longer pray as I was taught, but as the stars crawl onto my lap like soft animals at nighttime, and God tucks my hair behind my ears with the gentle fingers of her wind, and a new intimacy is uncovered in everything. Perhaps it's that I'm finally learning how to pray.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. I couldn't begin to write poems like this. I mean,
No?
I don't think so. I mean, we all have our gifts, you know.
But I couldn't begin to interview. Yeah, exactly. We were talking about this a little bit yesterday. One of your magical capacities is to interview people.
Yeah, and I'm perfectly happy with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to become an NBA basketball star either, but I have no regrets about that.
Exactly. We don't have to do it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is satisfying, you know, if there is something implanted in there that we really want to do, to pursue that.
And that's an interesting point in itself, because I think I interviewed a guy named Stephen Cope a few weeks ago, and we were talking about Dharma meaning that sort of course of action which is most evolutionary and most appropriate for each individual, you know, given their gifts and, you know, what they can do to serve. And I think everybody has one. And it's not necessarily going to make you world famous or rich or anything like that, but everybody has one. And when you find it, it can be extremely gratifying.
Yes.
And, you know, life can be very fulfilled. Like we were saying an hour ago, this suffering is very often a consequence of our not having found our Dharma, not having unlocked the inner gift which we intuitively know is there.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I don't feel either way ultimately about this, but if there's always a thing, you know, or if sometimes it's just kind of infusing our experience, whatever it is, with our joy, or I don't know if
I know what you
everyone has
mean.
like a really distinct thing. Maybe they do. Maybe they do.
Well, I mean, when I was interviewing him, we were talking about people who work in Amazon warehouses or Walmart or something, and you know, could that really be their Dharma? And I gave an example of a woman who works at our local Walmart who is just so much fun to interact with. She's always laughing and helping people, and she seems to be having a grand old time, you know. And
I have a really distinct memory of a guy working at the airport as the ticket guy who would give you your tickets, and he was so, I was like, man, this guy's totally enlightened. Like, he was just filled with light and sharing it with everybody. And those people, their work too, it's transcendent above what they do, because they're showing with their way and their actions that kind of like radiant joy can be had in any space. Yeah. And it's pretty profound when people are able to do that. And
he probably sees, you know, a couple thousand people a day or whatever, and uplifts every one of them.
Exactly. But I do have a poem about what you were talking about that's so spot on. I must read it.
Great, please. Which...
It's called, well, I also, and before I read it, I think, you know, we all have things that bring us joy, for sure. And then when we can put meaning behind what brings us joy through sharing that in some way, in a way that benefits others, then I think that's our Dharma. Like, doesn't have to be that complex. I think we can demystify that to some degree. Is just what's the path of what really brings us joy? Because whatever it is, if we're coming from that place, it activates that in those that we make contact with, and that's such a potent gift. But okay. So here's the thing that makes your heart sing. This poem is called. The thing that makes your heart sing might be quirky as hell. It might not do anything for capitalism. No one might buy it. You've probably written this thing off countless times for those reasons, and because you probably should do the dishes or something more practical like that instead. But this thing that makes your heart sing is the thing inside of you that most wants to topple your kingdom of shoulds, that wants deeply and burningly to be prioritized and for no particular reason, but that it brings so much light. It wants to look you straight in the eye and say, let's do this, baby. Even if it's drilling holes in seashells and stringing them to fishing line, even if it's drawing anatomical pictures of a flower with great care that are never meant to be hung in an art gallery, but to be pressed into the precious pages of your heart. Even if it's making a new kind of cookie each week and devouring them with relish on your couch by yourself, a sweet sacrament just meant to share with your taste buds. This thing that makes your heart sing will resurrect parts of your life and restore a sacred nutrient to your days. It can be muted but never silenced. If you're not sure what it is, just listen for the reoccurring whispers in your chest of that flame that will not die. The paradox is this. While the thing itself might seem simple, this thing that makes your heart sing will create a luminosity so bright you'll be the envy of all the stars and they'll want to jump into your body to feel it.
Wonderful. Love it.
Yeah.
That's really good.
It's nice how our conversation has just naturally brought up these thematically aligned poems.
Yeah, it's cool how a certain
fun.
point will come up and then you'll say, I've got a poem for that, you know?
Yeah.
And you've really kind of nailed a lot of these different subtle points in beautiful verse.
Mm.
There's another one I want you to read. It's
Yep.
The God Who Made the Octopus.
Oh, sure. That's a fun one.
I like that one.
That one came through right after this incredible SOT song that I was invited to participate in with Mary Reed, and I think she sent you that video.
I listened to that, yeah.
Or you listened to it. So that's, yeah, I'm so glad that
I don't usually
happened.
watch videos. I extract the audio from them and then I listen to them
Oh, cool.
while I walk in the woods.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. The God Who Made the Octopus.
Yeah.
Is that the one?
Uh-huh.
Okay, The God Who Made the Octopus. Awesome. So, the God Who Made the Octopus. If you think the eccentric God who made the octopus is going to judge you for your sins, I'm afraid you've missed the mark. If you think this wild God that spins galaxies as a pastime cares to get fussy about your mistakes, or has ever made anything that wasn't born perfect and luminous, you might need to repent. If you can't yet admit how lovable and infinitely worthy the fullness of your human nature is, and if you think God wants to do anything but perpetually pour an abundance of love gifts upon you, well, my dear, your soul just might need to go to confession.
Very nice. Have you seen My Octopus Teacher, by the way?
Oh, recently. And I loved it so much.
Yeah. It's great.
I loved it.
It's a documentary for those who don't know. It won the Oscar for Best Documentary, but everybody who watches it just totally loves it. I think it's on Netflix I think it's on Netflix.
Can I tell you about the process of publishing this second book,
Sure.
Let Us Dance?
You can tell me anything.
Cool. Great. So again, this book is about roughly 100 pages longer than my first book. And all the poems have come through just in the last 7 months, which has just been incredible. And but I wasn't really sure when to, another thing that's just important to mention is this whole journey has just been, it's been completely easeful. Like, there's been no pushing or forcing or stress. It's just been, anyway, it's been very amazing like that. But then I wasn't sure when I was gonna get around to publishing this next book, and it didn't feel like there was any climactic moment in which I didn't have anything planned for that. And we show the picture of it again, Rick?
The picture of what?
Of Let Us Dance?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm showing it now.
Oh, cool. So you see that beautiful fire woman dancing in the middle. I had found that picture and I thought that I would need to have an artist kind of remake it so it wasn't plagiarism or that I didn't have to pay a whole bunch for it. And so that was really my main holdup with publishing this book. And and then a generous person reached out to me to offer to make me a website pretty much for free. And she said, "Hey, I know you don't have a cover yet, but could you just give me a picture that can be like a stand-in?" And this was 2 weeks before today. And so I got her that middle picture of that firewoman dancing. And while I was doing that, I saw that it's free for commercial use. Like it had this big. So then I was like, oh man, I felt like I got a cosmic wallop in that moment. And it was like, Shalane, this is free. You need to run with this, and you need to have it done by July 3rd, your interview time with Rick, so you can announce it at Buddha at the gas pump. And so then it was like, just like that poem or that passage you read about how everything comes together when you commit. Like, so I really, this last 2 weeks, I put together this book, and it was easeful, even though it was intense. So I'm so grateful to have had this motivation, and just the way all the things aligned is just very cool.
Yeah, the whole principle of effortless action is, I think, significant.
Yes.
I mean, maybe some things need to be a little difficult for some reason, but I think for the most part, if you're really in tune, action is always going to be easeful because, nature it operates according to a principle of least effort. If you throw a ball, there are an infinite number of trajectories the ball could take, but the ball takes the most efficient trajectory. It takes the one with the least expenditure of energy and least effort. And a human being can function in tune with the laws of nature in a similar way, such that
Yes.
nature supports your activity and you're not sort of pushing and pulling against the flow of nature's intentions. And then action is effortless.
Totally. And sometimes I think people can interpret that as just pure passivity, but
No, it can be
like, you have to be a
dynamic.
participant. It's dynamic. It feels to me like surfing a wave.
Yeah.
And you have to, you learn some skills, and then you just get out there and wait for that beautiful wave, and then it flows you to places you couldn't have imagined.
I mean, surfing is a good example because surfers or
Yeah.
any really top-notch athletes, there's an effortlessness about their performance, which is part of the reason we love to watch them. It's sort of so artful because
Yes.
because it's so natural, and there's no sort of awkwardness or clunkiness, just
Yes.
smooth.
Totally. And that actually well describes how it feels when a poem's coming through. It's like a wave's coming, and I
Yeah.
just need to get ready for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And standing up, the equivalent of standing up on the board would be just, I need to get a pen really fast.
Yeah. Hanging
Yeah.
10.
Yeah.
Do you still write them most days?
Almost every day. Yeah. The last 2 days, not because it was just this,
Getting your book finished and everything.
getting it all finished and stuff. But and it was respectful. It was like, I'm not going to bother you today, the muse. But yeah, almost daily.
That's great.
Almost daily. Mm-hmm.
Do you feel a sort of a maturation or an evolution taking place?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Yes. Let Us Dance feels like has a very different tone than Susceptible to Light. And they both at the heart have this intention to liberate expression and affirm inherent light and help people navigate their shadows. And Let Us Dance it's just I got so much affirmation with Susceptible to Light that it encouraged me to kind of expand and try new things and speak more boldly. Really, it just really empowered my voice. So I would I would do more. It was very much a process of experimenting, and so I would make experiments and see how they were received, and then they were well received, so that emboldened me further. And so I would say there's a bolder tone in Let Us Dance. And my writing really transformed through working with Daniel Ladinsky too, because it was just, I was writing like 60 hours a week, like never before, just pulling from the depths.
Writing
and
what? Just poems or all kinds of stuff?
Mostly. So this book, Letters to and from a Young Poet, lot of time was poured into that. And then
is there prose in that, or is it just lots of poems?
It's almost all prose.
Well, that's going to be very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a potent book. I hope it completes someday.
Oh, it probably will. Just in time for you to go on the Oprah show.
There you go. There you go. And and then just a ton of poetry. And then I was also working on a book that he was encouraging that also will come to life someday. It's called Becoming the Full Moon: The Many Phases of Love, Creative Expression, and Wholeness.
Wow.
So that's another book of prose.
Yeah. I look forward to reading this stuff. We'll have to do another interview
thank you so
one
much.
of these days.
I would love that.
Yeah.
I'd love that. Yeah. So, and it was really through that process working with him that I really re-identified as, I'm a poet. This isn't a side gig. Like, this is what I do. And this is what I'm here for. Really connecting with that Dharma sense too of like, yeah, in a very potent way. So it's transformational. Mm-hmm.
It's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there anything else that we want to talk about, or certain poems that you're gonna kick yourself if you don't read today?
Good question. Are there any more questions that people have?
No other questions have come in from people that I know of. Irene would have sent them over, and in terms of the poems you sent me, let's see, A More Loving Candidate, Crown Chakra, Hafiz Was Generous, you already read that one. Don't Know What to Call, Make Your Love Visible, The Soul's Homeland, Things Are About to Get Interesting. Those are some of the ones you recommended.
That I haven't yet.
Right.
That I haven't yet read yet.
Right.
I'll read one more of those.
Okay, which one do you want to read?
I'll read The Soul's Homeland.
Okay, good.
I did a little editing, actually, of this poem today. So I'll read this printout here.
I'll show it on the screen, but there will be a few edits.
No problem, yeah. Okay, The Soul's Homeland. Sometimes my soul feels itself to be in great exile from its homeland. But then I remember my mother tongue is the poetry my heart is so fluent in, its dialect, laughter, and tears. My other native language is rising early to praise all the great things the sun falls upon. My national song is a geyser of joy, hitting the highest notes of ecstasy and breaking every glass ceiling in the mind that once trapped God inside. My anthem is the feisty love parade that marches gaily from my heart to yours. My religion is the untying of old knots that once kept my soul hitched to rigidity and smallness, and my doctrine is whatever comes after that, when the soul's full range of movement is restored. My flag is every mood of the moon that reflects my inmost heart. My ancestry is the collection of radiance from morning dew, passed down by blades of grass as they stand vigil in silent reverence to be part of the wonderment of receiving the ancient inheritance of each new morning. My DNA is the encrypted love notes written in the luminous ink from the stars. My soul is an ancient heritage of love songs from God. And whatever it is I'm doing here has mostly to do with pledging allegiance to this glorious anthem. Whatever I'm doing here has mostly to do with expressing my devotion for the borderless birthplace deep in my chest, where beauty again and again takes her first breath.
Awesome. Very nice.
Thank you.
So this is really cool. I'm really glad we got a chance to do this.
Wow, and the 2 hours flew by on the outset. That seems like a lot, but
Yeah,
No problem
it
there.
always flies by, because it's so.
Wow.
As Kermit the Frog said, time's fun when you're having flies.
Yeah. And again, Rick, I just so appreciate just the lack of spiritual egotism that you bring, and just the authentic. Yeah,
I've had it beaten out of me over the decades.
yeah. I mean, we all have some of it, but it's not prominent in you, and just how good that feels, and how it's so nice to connect with people at just such a human level. Um, I don't know, you just bring a lot of just this wonderful human, authentic stuff forward, and
Well,
I really
thanks.
appreciate you.
Yeah, and so do you. That's why people like you so much, because
Thanks.
you're
Oh, good.
so genuine and unpretentious.
Oh, good.
And
I'm glad that I come off that way.
yeah,
You
and
never know. It's always hard to know how we.
no, you're kind of buoyant. You're like
how
that
we
guy
do.
at the airport that just cheers up whoever you
Oh,
encounter.
thank you. Thank you. That's nice to hear.
Yeah, you're a light in the world,
Oh, thank you so much, Rick. Back at you.
and we need more lights like you.
Oh, let me talk about what's coming up next.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, let's see. So, gosh, I wish I remembered the dates. So my friend Mary and I are doing a series. We're live streamed a series of episodes in which we'll be diving into themes around just the experience of coming out as kind of a mystic, you could say, and just embracing the messiness of that process, and just about kind of trying to be on the path of living authentic truth. And there's more. Oh, one of the episodes is going to be called Redefining God. It's going to be juicy
So these would
and
be
wonderful.
like video webinar, Zoom type things, right?
Yeah, and people can sign up to be part of this, and it's on my website. I'm glad to remember to say that. So Shalane Harkin, first and last name.com. You can find it there. It'd be so nice to have you. It's going to be wonderful. Mary's the coolest person ever, and
I'll link to that from your page on BatGap. And,
yes.
And also probably
you
you can put it on Facebook too, and Mary will probably have it on her webpage or Facebook or whatever.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I assume.
Great. And then in the coming months, I'm also going to be putting out an album of my music.
Wow, music. I see a little guitar on the wall, but it didn't.
Oh, yep, that's mine.
You didn't tell us about that.
Guitar. Small guitar, big sound.
Huh.
Yeah, I love singing and poetry are my two main avenues.
Huh. You should put some of your poems to song.
I haven't found a way to make that work. I would love to be able to do that, but poetry and song poetry are different things. Like, you can get away with kind of cheesy rhymes in song poetry because the melody is so nice, that works. I don't know.
A couple of people who did that well. Well, Dylan obviously had some incredibly poetic songs. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature a few years ago. And Donovan had some really great poetic songs put to melody. And there was a group called the Incredible String Band, whom you've probably never heard of, but I'll have to send you a song or two.
My favorite musical poets are the Indigo Girls.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Incredible lyricism. And the Avett Brothers. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Never heard of them.
Really beautiful music.
Huh.
But yeah, so that'll be coming out. And then also I'm going to be a panelist on with the Center for Contemporary Mysticism in October.
Huh.
That's going to be fun. Just a Q&A about all kinds of different juicy subjects.
Neat. Well, you're not running out of things to do, are you? I heard you mention that somebody paid you $500 to come and give a talk. What was that all about?
Oh yeah, well that was really cool. So I just mini background about that. So my 4-year-old son has just really it's hard to get him to sleep at night. So sometimes when we're not feeling very patient, we just take him on a long drive. And I was on one of these long drives not more than a few months ago, and I just said a little prayer quietly because he was sleeping in the back, just for speaking opportunities.
Oh.
And I have really never done any public speaking. And then like 2 days later, I heard from 2 people who wanted me to be on a podcast, and then this this other person who just was like, hey, I'd love to pay you. I have this organization and the theme is moving forward with grace. Can you be the keynote speaker for $500?
Wow.
I was like, oh, okay. Well, sure. So I've just really, I've been saying yes to all the things that open, that feel like, so that's just been a capacity I've been wanting to develop, and I still want to develop. So if anybody has things that they would like to invite me to join them in, any of the listeners, I'm open. I'm excited.
Great.
That was a really good experience. And these 3 podcasts before this one, Rick, I feel really, I wouldn't have been ready for this without those.
Ah, neat.
So I'm grateful for that process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Mary said in her email to me, I don't think I read this part. She said, your listeners would very much enjoy having the chance to hear from her before fame swallows her up. I'm not exaggerating. So, so it seems like you're on a roll.
We'll see what happens. I'm saying yes to all the things that, I do want my work to reach people. It's had a really beautiful effect, and I'm so grateful for that. It's so nourishing. It's the coolest thing imaginable for me, for my work to reach people, and especially because I had held it close for so long and hadn't shared it. So I would love it to reach, have as wide of a reach as it possibly might. So we'll see what comes with that.
Yeah, I think there's a deep human tendency to want to expand one's territory of influence, and that can have a dark side to it or a light side to it,
Yes, absolutely.
But it's one of those natural human drives, I think.
That's interesting. Yeah. I've been thinking about that, kind of trying to, assessing my motivations and things, and thinking about how, fame really, like attachment to fame just really comes from like feeling from a sense of
smallness,
not enoughness and wanting to lean on that crutch of other people's approval or whatever. And that doesn't help. That doesn't help anyone, let alone ourselves. So anyway.
Yeah, but if the impulse is pure and if the motivation is pure, then we can utilize that natural tendency for good.
It's exciting and it's fun. It's really fun to have a platform to share.
It is.
Love and truth and joy and liberation. It's great.
Absolutely.
So, anyway, gosh, Rick. Well, I don't want to say goodbye.
Yeah. Well, we'll be in touch. I'll be putting up that Batgap page, but if new things come up, I don't put up people's announcements of every new event or something, but a book or, a new website or, something of permanent nature, we add them to people's Batgap pages if they want. And, and for those listening or watching, there'll be several links on your Batgap page that they can follow, like a link to your Facebook and to your website and all. But obviously, people know how to sign up for emails and become your Facebook friend and all that kind of stuff. We're going to work on that Facebook friend thing. You got 2 minutes?
Oh, yes, we are.
You're maxed out.
Yes. Thank you so much for all your support, Rick. I deeply, deeply appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing this. It's been a lot of fun. And
totally fun.
We will be talking to each other again.
Okay, thanks so much. I wish you just all the best and all the good that there is.
Yeah, and same for you.
Thanks.
So, and thanks to those who've been listening or watching. And as I mentioned earlier, next week I'm going to be interviewing a guy about intelligent design, which I find fascinating. And I don't care if some people think it's pseudoscience or something. I think there's something to it, and this guy expresses it brilliantly. And so that should be an interesting conversation. Kind of sciencey, but if you hang in there with us, I think you'll learn stuff. I certainly have been in preparing for it. So see you next time. Talk to you later.
Bye. Thanks to all the listeners. Nice talking with you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.